Solo Leveling by Gong. Chapter 40. How about Soloplay Guild? Boss, I was told yesterday that it'd be difficult for us to get the permit for the gate. Jiangsu, the guild master of the Knights Guild, had his mood soured as soon as he arrived at work. What? Yute, the vice master, quickly explained. The association's evaluation came out higher than they expected. Is it an S-rank gate? No, but it's a max level A rank. What a pain in the ass. S-rank gates, they could pass on easily. The Knights Guild had no S ranks in their roster, so it would be impossible for them. Jeju Island had made it clear that you'd need all of South Korea's S-rank hunters for that. However, A-rank gates were a different story. People would talk if the Knights, a top 5 guild, couldn't handle an A-rank gate. The guild was already on shaky ground, and this could leave them with none to stand on at all. What are we going to do, boss? I'm not sure yet. If we pass on the gate, the famed guild will take it for sure. The famed guild of the Honam area. Jiangsu's eye twitched at the mere mention. This gate is on our turf, and you want to hand it over to Dongwook Ma on a silver platter? I'm just saying, boss. Over my dead body. So you're going for it? Enraged, Jiangsu bit his lip. It was clear why he did. It was best he refrained from blurting anything out when he was this worked up, since the lives of his guild members were on the line. He could feel a headache coming on. Our A-rank hunters are as good as anyone from the larger guilds. Both the quality and quantity of their A-rank hunters were comparable to the Hunters Guild, the best in Korea. The only issue was their lack of S-rank hunters. The Knights Guild was in danger of dropping out of the top 5 solely because they lacked a single S rank. Their elite members could easily take care of the average A-rank gate, but if the magic power of the gate was on the high end, their hunters would be risking their lives because of the lack of S-rank hunters, since the level of difficulty for such gates was closer to that of S-rank despite the A-rank classification. Hence why the Hunters Association was on the fence on whether to grant them the raid permit. As Jiangsu continued racking his brain, Yude spoke up cautiously. Boss, we'll be done for if it turns out to be a red gate. That's true. An upper rank gate was enough of a problem, but if it turned into a red gate, the mere thought was horrifying. If they were lucky, maybe half of them would survive. Otherwise, the entire strike squad, including Jiangsu himself, would lose their lives. The smart thing to do would be to let it go. However, their fate would be sealed if word got out that they'd given up an A-rank gate. What rookie would be willing to join a guild that didn't have an S-rank hunter and couldn't even clear an A-rank gate? How about we team up with another guild? Jiangsu shook his head. Why would they agree knowing we only asked them because we couldn't handle it ourselves? Especially not when they could take the gate for themselves without bothering to involve anyone else. And even if another guild agreed to join forces, there'd be yet another problem. It'd be advertising to everyone that we're incompetent. As the two men grew more concerned. If not another guild, then what about another person? The men turned toward the female voice coming from the side of the room. It was Yerim Young, the A-rank healer assigned to the head strike squad. Healers got a huge say in matters regarding raids, especially if the healer was an A rank with a variety of skills, like Yerim. Unfortunately, with the fate of the Knights Guild hanging in the balance, it was difficult for Jiangsu to hide his helplessness. We're going inside a top-level A-rank gate, so what help would an Indivai? Jiangsu stopped. Oh! The face popped into his head of a man who could wipe out not only A rank, but also S-rank magic beasts all on his own. Jiangsu was so excited that he jumped out of his seat. What if Jin Wusung joined us on the raid? The man was able to easily defeat a magic beast that an entire group of S-rank hunters couldn't. If Jinwoo helped them, the safety of their squad members would be guaranteed. And that wasn't all. The Knights Guild would avoid the stigma of needing another guild's help. This would even boost our reputation. There was no downside to this. It would save the lives of their team members, as well as restore the honor of the Knights Guild. Talk about killing two birds with one stone. Jongsu giddily asked, "What's Hunter sung up to these days?" Neither Yerim, who had proposed the initial idea, nor Yute, who had been listening quietly, had a clue. Other than clearing the gate that appeared in the middle of the road, he's been pretty quiet, Yute said, recalling something he'd seen on the news recently. He took out his cell phone. "Should I look up his contact info, boss?" "No, that's okay. Don't bother." "What?" "We can't do something this important over the phone. We have to talk to him in person." "I see." Jongsu grinned at Yute. "We're going to Seoul." That night, Hain burrowed under her blanket and kicked herself in embarrassment. "I think so." "Did I really say?" "I think so." That was basically a confession. She flailed around for a bit, but suddenly froze as a thought crossed her mind. But then, how should Hain interpret Jinwoo's response? Then isn't there a better way to handle this than join the guild? At the time, Hain had said she'd think about it in order to flee. Her brain stopped working every time she reflected on that moment. She flushed as she unwittingly recalled it again. When Hain had looked upon the crazed eyes of the enlarged minion, she'd felt as though death was inevitable. She'd felt absolute fear of the destiny of those who were prey. Hain had squeezed her eyes shut after seeing his claws coming at her from either side. But at that moment, she'd felt warmth behind her, and a familiar scent had wrapped itself around her. Oh! Hain had slowly opened her eyes and looked over her shoulder to see Jinwoo standing there, gripping the minion's claws and glowering at him. It was true that moment had made her heart pound. However, "I have to ask, do you have a thing for me or something?" Asking that question in that moment was cheating, wasn't it? Wait, no. Hain shook her head vigorously, as if trying to banish the notion. Even if Jinwoo had asked, she shouldn't have answered honestly, since he could think of me as a freak. But she hadn't meant to. Despite telling herself to keep quiet, her mouth had opened of its own accord. It had happened only because she felt relaxed around him, like she wasn't herself. Like I'm not myself? For some reason, those words sounded familiar to Hain, but from where? She'd definitely heard something similar before. And then, a memory that had been erased brushed through her mind. "Please tell him." Hain bolted upright. It definitely hadn't been that long ago, but the faint voice calling out from deep within her memories was similar to the sensation of having just woken up and trying to remember the dream she'd been having. "Please tell him that." Hain tried to pull up the memory of whose voice this was as well as the contents of the message. It was hazy, as if it was surrounded by a thick fog, but it was gradually starting to take shape. "Please tell him that he needs to be careful. I met Hunter Byung-gu Min when she was unconscious and had fallen into an endless darkness. The one who had pulled her out was Byung-gu. At first, it had felt unpleasant as the peaceful darkness was disrupted, but that feeling hadn't lasted. She had found it strange that Byung-gu was wearing black armor. The only part of him she could make out was his face, but his expression had been uncharacteristically sad. Hain felt a sudden chill run down her spine as she processed these memories. Byung-gu had looked like he was trying not to cry as he spoke. "Tell Hunter Jinwoo-sung. Tell Hunter Jinwoo-sung. Please tell him that he needs to be careful of the power he possesses." Jinwoo stood in front of the bathroom mirror after his shower. He certainly looked pretty good, but he still couldn't believe someone as beautiful as Hane had feelings for him and would be willing to change guilds for him. Am I that attractive? Ji-woo smirked as he continued staring into the mirror. He wasn't in any danger of becoming a vain, narcissistic person, but he did have one thing he was immensely proud of. As a result of not missing a single daily quest, he had bulked up quite a bit, and whether it was due to the system, he was definitely taller than before. But that just meant his body was the only thing he had going for him. His face was, well, apart from his steely gaze, he looked like the average guy on the street. However, wait a minute. Jinwoo's gaze turned serious as he peered at his reflection. He leaned forward to take a closer look. The Jinwoo in the mirror and the real Jinwoo stared at each other for a while. He'd found something interesting. He examined every part of his face, and as he suspected, things had definitely changed. His scars, moles, and blemishes had never been very pronounced, but they were nonetheless completely gone. Is this from the Spirit of Rehabilitation buff? One of the buffs Jinwoo had received as a reward for becoming a player was that any damage to his body would be repaired. The buff was powerful enough to regenerate the leg that had been severed by the stone statue, so the buff could definitely have improved his complexion as well. The thing that caught his eye was, I'm pretty sure I look younger than before. He was in his mid-20s, but inspecting himself now, Jinwoo figured he could be easily mistaken for someone in his early 20s or so. How amazing. He'd heard that mana slowed down an awakened being's aging, so perhaps this was a similar effect? Okay, that's enough. It felt silly to be staring at himself in the mirror for this long, so he exited the bathroom. Jaina happened to emerge from her bedroom at the same time, so the siblings entered the living room together. Jinwoo grinned and called to her. Hey, what do you think about your big brother? What about you? Like how attractive I am as a man? Huh? Jaina raised an eyebrow. Where is all this unfounded confidence coming from? To me, you're just the same old brother I've always had. Well, gosh, thanks. Jinwoo pinched her cheek, and she retaliated with her usual kick in the shin. Of course, she only hurt herself in the process. Have you already forgotten who I am? How do you study with that brain of yours? Excuse you. Jaina pouted and glared at Jinwoo. I was first place in the entire school on the last mock exam, I'll have you know. Jinwoo was amused by her reaction, but tried not to laugh. One of the wonderful things about family was they treated you the same no matter how much you changed. Jinwoo dried his wet hair with a towel as he walked past his sister. Keep up the good work. You too. Jinwoo was about to go back to his room when he remembered something. Oh yeah, I'm thinking of forming a guild. Whoa! Jaina's eyes twinkled in excitement. Are people gonna call you Mr. President now? If everything goes well, what's the name of your guild? I kind of wanted to ask you about that. Oh, what is it? What is it? Seeing her filled with anticipation, Jinwoo cautiously asked, What do you think of Soloplay Guild? Huh? The contents of her response were the same as when they'd been joking around, but the tone was completely different. Gone was the playful teasing. Her confusion was genuine this time. Why? Does it sound weird? Why would you name your guild that? Because I like to work alone. It definitely fits you, but it doesn't really work with your guild. Why not? Don't you summon those soldiers in black armor? Yeah. So technically you don't fight alone. She had a point. Jinwoo nodded. Even though, to me, it's just one of my skills, other people don't see it that way. That made sense. This guild might be part of Jinwoo's life forever, so he wanted a name that properly represented him. Hence, Soloplay, but if it's not resonating with others, then it doesn't matter. He needed something that represented him. Jinwoo thought of something else. How about a Jin guild? A Jin? Jaina tried saying the name aloud and brightened. It sounds like you just flipped my name, so I can get behind it. What does it mean? It's combining the Chinese characters for myself and moving forward. It was a name that made it clear this was something only he could do, and a name he'd like to attach to the guild he planned to move forward with. When you combine the characters together, it makes a Jin, meaning I move forward. Oh! Jaina gave him the best compliment she could give. That's not bad, I guess. The next day, Jinwoo went to the office to propose the new name. So about the guild name? Jinho, who had been in the office all morning, smiled brightly. I really like it, boss. Just as how a swan looks peaceful floating on the surface of a lake, but its feet are desperately kicking like crazy underwater. So, too, was Jinho. I'm fine with whatever as long as it's not Soloplay. He had thought long and hard about it, but introducing himself as Jinho Yu, Vice President of the Soloplay Guild, physically hurt him. Jinho didn't know why, but he could actually feel pain on one side of his chest. But how could he complain about a name his beloved boss had worked hard to come up with? So just as he resigned himself to his fate, along came a fleeting opportunity. Let's go with that, boss! With his partner's endorsement, the name was settled. That's taken care of. In his mind, Jinho was screaming for joy. Jinwoo rubbed his chin and thought. So all that's left is finding the last founding member. Oh, about that. Yeah. What happened with Hunter Cha yesterday? Hunter Cha won't be joining us. She's not what I'm looking for. HNGH? Jinho swallowed his gasp. He knew Jinwoo had high standards, but he couldn't understand how he wasn't satisfied with a hunter like Hain. She was an S rank, young, and her abilities were amazing, bar none. On top of that, she was gorgeous. No matter how he looked at it, he couldn't figure out why she hadn't made the cut. That was, of course, by looking at it from an ordinary person's perspective. Jinwoo was anything but ordinary. He took down an S-rank magic beast almost entirely by himself on his first official raid after being reevaluated. It made sense that Jinwoo wouldn't settle for just a mid-tier S-rank hunter. But then, what kind of hunter would meet his standards? Several hundred had applied to their guild after seeing Jinwoo's name in the description, but Jinho had a feeling none of them would do. I don't think we'll ever find a better candidate than Hunter Cha. Jinho was concerned that they'd never set up shop at this rate, so he carefully asked, boss? What kind of person are you looking for? Someone with a hunter's license but no interest in the guild's activities. And someone we can trust. Huh? Jinho knew the perfect fit. That sounds like... But at that moment... Knock, knock. Someone was at the office door. Who is it? Jinho opened it to reveal two unfamiliar men standing there awkwardly. It was Jongsu and Yu-tae, the guild master and vice master of the Knights Guild respectively. They had come to Seoul on a whim to meet with Jinwoo. Jongsu smiled brightly upon recognizing the S-rank hunter. Oh, you're here. Jinwoo stood up. And you are? Apologies, I haven't even introduced myself. Jongsu strode over to Jinwoo and politely stretched out his hand. I'm Jongsu Park, the guild master of the Knights. Jinwoo nodded. No wonder Jongsu seemed familiar. Even people who weren't that interested in the world of hunters would recognize the masters of the top 5 guilds. They were on TV often enough. But the Knights Guild was located in Busan, on the opposite side of South Korea. Jin-woo looked quizzically at them. "What brings you here?" "So the thing is," Jong-soo hesitated and exchanged glances with Yoo-tae before speaking with much difficulty. "We have to take care of this pretty big A-rank gate, and—" He steeled himself and got to the point. "May we have a minute of your time? I swear you won't regret it." The appearance of a huge gate at Gwangali Beach has caused a panic among civilians. Hunters Association deliberating whom to give permit to. The Knights Guild surrenders the Gwangali Beach raid permit? Is this a repeat of the Jeju Island nightmare? Jong-soo clicked one of the many news videos and played it for Jin-woo. "Over there, look. Are you filming this?" "Yeah, I am." "Whoa, is that for real? How can a gate be so big?" The video had presumably been taken by regular people whose voices were filled with fear, and understandably so, considering the enormity of the gate. It was taller than a 10-story building. While civilians had gotten used to gates appearing without warning anytime, anywhere, this one was still big enough to actually frighten people. "There's really no correlation between the size of a gate and its rank," Jong-soo explained once the video had ended. "But we've confirmed that the incredible amount of mana coming from this particular gate matches its size." The news piqued Jinwoo's interest. "Is it an S-rank gate? We were told it wasn't impossible to rank this one, but it still came in just below the limit. This seems to be the biggest gate to ever appear in Busan." That meant the gate was as close to S rank as an A rank gate could get. So it should yield a good amount of experience points, shouldn't it? Unlike Jin-woo, whose heart was beginning to soar, Jong-soo sounded glum. "Like you've seen, the association doesn't want to give us the permit. Because it's too dangerous? As you know, we have no S-rank hunters in our guild. The association just doesn't trust us to handle the gate." Jong-soo paused to look at Jin-woo. "If you're still looking for a guild to join..." Jin-woo interrupted him by gesturing to the file sitting on the meeting room table. The words printed on the cover caught Jong-soo's eye. "List of applicants for the guild's founding members." Jong-soo rubbed the back of his head in embarrassment. Jong-soo's plan to recruit Jin-woo for the Knights Guild had gone up in flames. So it was time to discuss the real topic at hand. "The elite hunters of the Knights Guild rival those in the Hunters Guild. The only difference is we don't have an S rank who can lead them." The Knights had done well until now, but no one knew what could happen in this raid. In the event that something unexpected might occur, they needed a high-rank hunter in their party. The presence of an S rank could turn a situation around. The man sitting in front of him, Jin-woo himself, was a prime example of this. His sudden appearance had changed the fate of the Korean team when they were facing death. Seeing Jin-woo in person, he seemed like thoroughly reliable even in the eyes of a fellow hunter. Would he give me an autograph if I asked for one? Jong-soo understood why Yerim had suggested they ask Jin-woo for an autograph even if he rejected their proposal. "Is there something on my face?" "No, nothing." Jong-soo laughed and waved it off. "If you join our strike squad this one time, Hunter-sung, we can do this raid." Jin-woo crossed his arms and leaned back. Before Jin-woo could mull it over, Jong-soo hurriedly added, "Of course, we would give you proper compensation." He produced the contract he had brought with him. "We'll give you 20% of the profits." A large guild offering an individual 20% of their profits from a dungeon was an excellent offer most couldn't even begin to dream of. When a large guild raided a dungeon, an S-rank hunter would usually receive around 10%, but the Knights Guild was offering Jin-woo double that. It was certainly a lucrative offer. However, Jin-woo had a different idea. 50-50. Jong-soo was in the midst of taking out a pen. His hand quivered. "Pardon me? If you treat me as a guild and not a person, I'll cooperate." Jin Woo spoke firmly. Jiangsu agonized over the counterproposal. GUH. However, Jiangsu couldn't play hardball like Jin Woo. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that the fate of the Knights Guild depended on this raid. Jin Woo tooted to himself. 20%, isn't it? It wasn't that Jin Woo was attempting to take advantage of the Knights Guild's desperate situation. He was merely offering the most equitable split after taking everything into consideration, and that was 50-50. Not even the elite members of the Knights can hold a candle to my Shadow soldiers. They were no match for Jin Woo's soldiers either in quantity or quality. And that was before adding Jin Woo into the equation, meaning 20% would basically be working for free. This would be a fair and beneficial deal for both parties. Why would Jin Woo agree to anything less and undervalue himself?
How about 40-6? This isn't a negotiation. So you won't accept anything other than a 50-50 split?
Jin Woo nodded in response. And Jiangsu was lost in thought. I figured this guy would be easy to deal with, since he's young and seems nice enough, but he understood where Jin Woo was coming from, though. Jin Woo could single-handedly beat all the other S-rank hunters. That was the kind of person they were trying to recruit, so what Jin Woo was suggesting wasn't unreasonable. No. Jiangsu shook his head. It definitely wasn't unreasonable. Had Jin Woo been spiteful, he could have asked for 80%. Besides, Jiangsu needed this deal to go through more than Jin Woo did. It would be an unimaginably huge loss for the Knights Guild to give up on this raid. On the other hand, what would Jin Woo lose? Absolutely nothing. Jiangsu felt as if he had been forcibly seated at the bargaining table by gunpoint. Considering the whole situation, wasn't Jin Woo being a gentleman by asking for only half? But that wasn't all. If this deal went through, the Knights Guild would have secured the most reliable insurance they could get. Yunti's words from yesterday popped into his mind.
Boss, we'll be done for if it turns out to be a red gate.
But if Jin Woo accompanied them? He hadn't faltered once, as he dealt with several thousand S-rank magic beasts. Jiangsu had watched with his own eyes what happened to the ants on Jeju Island. He did all of that, didn't he? The reality of who exactly was sitting in front of him suddenly sank in. Gulp. He swallowed hard. After what he had witnessed with the ants, how could Jiangsu even think about offering a mere 20%? The rude one was me all along. Jiangsu readily admitted his mistake. In his mind, he was now thankful for Jin Woo's generous offer. But his gratitude could go only so far. Since Jiangsu had to surrender something, it was only fair to request something from Jin Woo in return, but what? After a long deliberation, Jiangsu cautiously opened his mouth.
We will accept these terms, but in return. In return? Can we leave the Magic Beast boss to you?
Jiangsu's face was serious as he resolved to get this one concession from Jin Woo, no matter what. Since the boss tended to cause most of the damage in a dungeon, Jiangsu was willing to raise the stakes by asking Jin Woo for the sake of minimizing the danger to the strike squad. Seeing what he did in the ant cave, he shouldn't have a problem dealing with the boss alone. Jiangsu pressed his lips tightly together as he nervously anticipated Jin Woo's response. As the silence wore on, his worry about being rejected grew, and his face hardened. On the other hand, snort. As he fought to keep the corners of his mouth down, Jin Woo raised his hand from his chin to cover the smile threatening to escape and quickly furrowed his brow. He wanted it to seem like he was deep in thought over Jiangsu's request. His ruse worked. Wringing his hands anxiously, Jiangsu lost all sense of time as he anxiously waited. Finally, Jin Woo let out a sigh like he had no choice.
All right then.
He waited a beat before continuing.
I'll do it.
Jiangsu pumped both his fists under the table.
We did it.
He felt as if all his worries and concerns had washed away. Why had he dragged this matter out for so long? He should have opened with this. Ever since they left Busan, Jong-soo had been tense, but he now wore a big smile on his face. All that was left to do was contact the association about the raid permit. With Ji-woo joining the strike squad, there shouldn't be any obstacles.
The gate was discovered a while ago, so we should get the raid started tomorrow. I'll see you then.
Oh! Jong-soo paused from packing up his items.
Why don't you ride down with us in our car?
He figured it would be more efficient to go together rather than make arrangements for travel, schedule a meeting place and time, and all that.
We can put you up at the most luxurious hotel in the area.
But Ji-woo didn't need to suffer through a long car ride. He merely had to place one of his soldiers in Jong-soo's shadow. That way, he'd never get lost or be late. Ji-woo snuck a peek at the circular shadow making its way across the floor as he offered up an excuse.
I have an errand to run this evening, unfortunately. I see. I'll be there on time.
Barring the guild master himself being late, of course. At that moment, Yoo-tae, who was coming back from the restroom, let out a yelp.
Be boss!
Startled, Jong-soo sprang to his feet.
What? What is it? That shadow just moved. From that side to that side.
Jong-soo paused, then glared at his vice master.
Yoo-tae, have you been drinking?
Yoo-tae was at a loss for words at the cold reception, and sheepishly scratched his nose.
I asked if you've been drinking. I only had a couple cans of beer at the rest stop, boss. Didn't I tell you to be careful when we're on official business? I'm sorry, boss.
Yoo-tae bowed apologetically to Jong-soo and Ji-woo.
My apologies, Hunter-sung.
Jong-soo bowed to Ji-woo as well as he kept Yoontae's head pushed down.
Please allow me to apologize for the disruption. Yoo-tae is a good guy, but sometimes talks nonsense when he drinks. No, it's okay. Shadows can move around sometimes, I'm sure.
As they were about to conclude the meeting on a good note, Jinwoo's cell phone began to vibrate on the table. VRRR, VRRR, VRRR. Who is this? He checked the caller ID, but it was a number he had never seen before.
Excuse me. I need to answer this. Please go ahead.
The nervous Jong-soo and noisy Yoo-tae simultaneously breathed out sighs of relief as Ji-woo politely excused himself from the room. Yoo-tae muttered,
I'm telling you, that shadow was really moving. Drop it.
Jong-soo's glare shut him up. After a brief silence, Yoontae's curiosity got the best of him.
So how did it go? How do you think? Of course, he decided to join the raid. That's great.
Yoontae's expression went from anxious to excited. Smiling, he inquired,
By the way, did you ask him about joining our guild? Forget it. He said he was making his own and showed me this.
Jong-soo picked up the file of applicants like Ji-woo had. Yoo-tae chuckled.
With all the guilds already established, how much can this guild be expected to grow? If he joined us, he'd be treated like a king. He's going through a lot of trouble for nothing. I agree.
As Jong-soo pursed his lips in disappointment and moved to put the file back, an application fell out. He winced and quickly picked it up but then froze.
Huh?
The picture of a woman attached to the application was one he knew well.
Oh.
Yoo-tae was stunned as well.
Boss, isn't that?
He still couldn't believe what he was seeing, but Jong-soo nodded in confirmation.
Yeah, it's the vice president of the Hunters Guild.
Yoo-tae quietly stared at Haynes' picture before glancing at the other man.
Boss, maybe we should let them acquire us.
Jong-soo immediately scowled.
Oh, shut up.
Outside the office, Ji-woo answered the call, and a familiar female voice came from the other end.
Hello, dear.
Upon hearing the voice, Jean Wu felt relieved and strangely disappointed at the same time.
Did you buy a cell phone, Mom? Yes. I called you because I had a sudden desire to hear my son's voice as soon as I bought it. Are you busy? I'm not interrupting anything, am I?
Jean Wu glanced back at the two waiting men from the Knights Guild and smirked.
Not at all. That's a relief. But I'm not sure if this was a good idea. I still can't get used to this kind of thing. Did you go to the store on your own? You didn't take Gina with you? Why bother her when she's busy with her studies?
It'd be nice if his mother thought less about her kids and more about herself sometimes. He sighed to himself as he ended the call. So, why was he so disappointed that it was his mother calling? Who was I expecting it to be? Jean Wu smiled as he put his phone in his pocket and then looked up. The twinkle in his eye was back. Thanks to the men from the Knights Guild, he'd be able to breathe in the air of a dungeon once more. An A-rank gate that's closer to an S rank, they said. It felt like forever since his last proper workout. Had it only been a week since he got back from Jeju Island? He'd cleared one B-rank red gate since then, which had been nothing special and had taken very little effort. Ba dump, be a dump. Jean Wu hadn't felt his heart racing like this in a while, and found himself looking forward to tomorrow's raid. All the elite hunters of the Knights Guild were gathered at the meeting place. They were excitedly anticipating the raid, and for good reason. This was a gate that could jeopardize their lives, and if it turned out to be a red gate, they wouldn't have an escape route. But everything would be okay, because Jean Wu's son would be joining them on this raid.
Yes!
Yerim had let out a scream of joy as soon as she heard the news. The other hunters had also expressed their delight in their own ways at the deployment of this ultimate safety net. Only one person was anxious here, Jiangsu, the guild master, who nervously awaited him. Damn it, I should have just made him come with us yesterday. Jiangsu checked his watch. It was 5 minutes to 11. The raid was supposed to begin in 5 minutes. Jean Wu had said he'd be there on time, but Jiangsu could see neither hide nor hair of him. His stomach began to churn. They couldn't even begin without Jean Wu. The association had immediately handed over the permit when they were informed of Jin Wu's participation. Such was the influence of the S-rank hunter's name. So to go in without him? More importantly, Jiangsu looked at the faces of the strike squad, their eyes bright and eager. The strike squad themselves could end up boycotting the raid even before the association could cancel it if Jean Wu didn't show. 3 minutes left. Jiangsu anxiously fished out his cell phone, but forced himself to be patient and put it in his pocket. Surely it was rude to call someone who'd already contacted him 10 minutes earlier and said he'd be there soon. But Jiangsu couldn't sense a powerful presence in the area. The guild master searched for something to calm his nerves and ended up with a cigarette in his mouth. Where in the world are you, Hunter Seung? Meanwhile, Jean Wu exited his apartment building. He wore comfortable clothes and sneakers. When he checked the time, it was 1 minute to 11. As he looked up, he saw gray clouds gathering. Had Gina taken an umbrella with her? But that thought was fleeting. I should get going. Jean Wu pulled up his hood and smiled. First, he activated stealth, and then shadow exchange. He swapped places with his shadow soldier. At Gina's high school, 3 male students were annoyed at having to run an errand for their art teacher.
Isn't this forced labor? Yeah. Why are we doing his job for him?
Despite their complaints, they arrived at the second art classroom, which was currently being used for storage, and unlocked the door.
Oof, the dust. Ugh.
Since the room had been in use for quite some time, they were met by a big cloud of dust. Worn art supplies, abandoned drawings, and model statues used for sketching were scattered throughout.
How many statues did he ask for again? I'm guessing 6, since there are 6 groups. Come on! Even if we each carry one, we'll still have to make 2 trips. I mean, unless you can carry 4 at once.
They rolled up their sleeves, but when one of them moved to grab a statue in the far corner, something caught his eye.
Huh?
The others also came closer at his strange tone.
Hey, that's...
There on the wall was a large black hole. It was a gate about the size of a person. The biggest of the 3 students inspected the gate and laughed.
It's no big deal.
He placed his hand on its surface.
It's a closed gate, so it's perfectly safe. No one can go in except hunters, and nothing can come out.
Yet, at that moment, crick! A crack appeared on the surface of the gate, and a hand shot out to grab the student's head.
Huh?
He struggled, but the hand wouldn't budge at all. And then, crunch! There was a sound similar to a nut being cracked, and blood sprayed everywhere.
Jiga! Junsuk!
When the 2 other students screamed as they were splattered with blood, the black surface of the gate shattered like glass, and magic beasts started pouring out into their world.